Redditors, what happened at a wedding that made it obvious that the bride and groom shouldn't be getting married? And are they still together? So, a wedding guest looking out of the window beamed at the groom waiting at the altar and said, "She's here!" And the groom jokingly pretended to run away. It went down like a lead balloon because he had actually run away the previous year, literally went out to the shops and didn't come back for 8 weeks while she was pregnant with their first child. The bride's mother then gave him a look that would have wilted the wedding flowers, and happy chatter in the room turned to frosty silence, just in time for the entrance of the bride. They are still together many years later and have had more children together, but I wouldn't describe them as happily married. Next story. The bride got so drunk that the bar cut her and everyone else off. The groom was also drunk. People started leaving at midnight, and the bride got mad and yelled about how they were all ruining her wedding because she wanted to dance and drink more. And I was their designated driver to get them to their hotel. The entire drive there, they fought. She berated him. He cried. That was a long 20-minute drive. I could have scrubbed vomit out with the cleaners, but the awkwardness has stained that car forever. They've been together for 7 years. Their daughter, born 9 months after the wedding, is adorable though. Next story. One of my brothers had a crap storm of a wedding. Announced that they were pregnant right before the ceremony, stealing their own thunder, had it outdoors at this strange country club place that did not seem to understand how to do a wedding. It was windy too. They had the ceremony outside, chairs and other things blew away. They invited around 100 people. They had around half the people not bother to show up after RSVPing. The desserts, besides the wedding cake, never showed up, which worked out, I guess, with the number of people who were missing. He then asked me to give a speech, like just called me up to say a few words without any warning, after telling me my daughter wasn't allowed at the wedding because it was no children, which I might have understood had they not allowed the maid of honor and the bride's sister to each bring their children as exceptions. One a newborn, one a few months older than my daughter. And turned out I wasn't the only one asked to give a speech without being warned. My other brother gave an epic speech, and he just said, "I'm a cop, and if your relationship was a car on the highway, I'd give you a speeding ticket and say slow down because you're going too effing fast." And then my brother sat back down. They were divorced before they made it to 1 year. Next story. At a friend's wedding 2 years ago, the bride kept the bar open until 3 a.m. after the groom went home at 10 p.m. She kept telling everyone that she is just with him because he has money and a flat. They are now going through a divorce after she cheated on him. Next story. I have a few, but the most obvious one was the bride getting caught giving somebody a BJ other than her husband in the parking lot between the wedding ceremony and reception. And for part B, they aren't together. They weren't even together when the reception started. Next story. My sister-in-law got married last fall, and after the ceremony, they got in an epic fight over the marriage certificate and didn't come to the reception until 2 hours after it started. A week later, they separated for a few weeks while trashing each other on Facebook. They're still together, and she's now pregnant. Edit. I also photographed this wedding, and it was the most stressful professional experience I have ever had. I forgot to mention too that the groom and groomsmen dropped a bunch of acid before the ceremony and continued into the reception. He freaked out, had a panic attack, and left. Next story. I don't know him personally, but there was a story in my town of the bride walking in on the groom essaying the maid of honor at the wedding, and they went through with the wedding anyway. Then said bride was the maid of honor at her maid of honor's wedding a week or two later, and I think it was someone after this that the maid of honor reported the assault. Next story. During the cake cutting, he smashed cake in her face. She immediately started crying and went to the bathroom for about 30 minutes. Then they got into a huge fight and barely spoke the rest of the night. Shockingly, they are still married, but they still fight all the time. She's my friend from college, so we keep in touch occasionally. She never has good things to say about him, though. So I remember reading a story a long time ago about a wedding, and the bride kept telling the groom, "Do not smash my face in the cake. Do not smash my face in the cake. Do not smash my face in the cake." And he did it anyway, and she was so mad and ended everything. Why do people do that? Is that a thing people like? I really don't know, but is that something people want? I can't imagine it's the majority of people getting married. Would I do that to my bride? No, because I want to eat the cake, not smash my wife's face in it. I don't know. Maybe I'm the outlier. Maybe it's a traditional thing. I haven't been to many weddings. But anyway, cake is delicious. Next story. So, the wedding was fake. Bride and groom were quite young and dated happily for several months. Bride was in a hurry to settle down, I think to fit in with our friendship group who had or were doing the same, and pushed for engagement. And groom was reasonably happy to oblige, but not ready to take the next step and wanted a long engagement. Bride began pushing to set wedding dates almost immediately. Groom's mother and father were unwell with both physical and mental health issues. Getting closer to the wedding date, groom made it known that he loved Bride, but wasn't ready to settle down yet. Bride wasn't giving any of it and complained to her own immediate family about this, who starts harassing groom's parents about how he's a dog, mistreating their daughter, etc. Groom agrees to go ahead with the wedding if Bride's family leaves his parents alone. And wife wasn't too happy with this and called up the celebrant to talk some sense into him. Celebrant refused to perform a wedding where one party wasn't on board, but Bride insisted the event go ahead and that they pretend it was real. But with a bunch of guests who had been married or attended weddings recently, we all immediately noticed that the celebrant didn't say the words legally required for marriage. In Australia, evidently this isn't a requirement elsewhere apparently, and no paperwork was signed either. Groom's parents refused to attend the reception, leaving table 1 half empty and not paying for the bar service. Guests took back their gifts. Bride and groom avoided each other the entire time except for a super awkward first dance. The whole thing was super surreal and awkward. They split up a couple of months later. Next story. Well, at her bachelorette party, she broke down, drunk, and told us that she knew she shouldn't marry him, and that she knew it wouldn't work. We begged her not to go through with it, but she did. On the day of the wedding, his uncle pulled him aside and said, "You don't have to do this," while counting out $100 bills. The wedding was then delayed due to a storm. This caused the bride to get angry and snap at everyone who even tried to talk to her. Finally, the storm let up and the wedding took place. Mid-reception, the bride angrily stormed out of the reception, and that kind of broke up the festivities. And no, they are not still married. She started cheating on her husband less than a year in, and they got divorced shortly thereafter. This was 15 to 16 years ago. He remarried a year or so later and is still married to that woman. She just finished up her second divorce. I haven't spoken to her in years because, well, she's a really toxic person who does not see how her actions contribute directly to her misery. And I no longer live in our tiny hometown, so I don't have to be friends with crappy people I don't like that much anyway. Next story. My brother's wedding. It was super uncomfortable and awkward during their engagement. My parents kept asking him if he was sure. He said yes. Then came the wedding. Super small. When they said to kiss, they both went in for a peck, but she turned her face at the last minute, so he kissed her cheek. My husband yelled for them to do it again. I was also their wedding photographer, and he knew I didn't get a good shot. And the marriage only got weirder and worse from there. They acted like they were on an awkward first date every day. Finally, a year later, they divorced. Okay, so I know we've heard so many stories where this relationship shouldn't even have gotten past the first date, but how do you get to this point where it's just awkward all the time? OP didn't mention if they rushed into things. Maybe they did, but like just perpetual awkwardness all the time around the person you're supposed to be with. I'm sure there's some details that happen behind the scenes, but man, how do you get that far, really? That's disappointing. Anyway, next story. So, my parents attended a wedding where the bride's mother persistently told the groom to pay more attention to her daughter, i.e. the bride, instead of just chatting with his friends, and the bride seemed upset. My parents came back from the wedding, which was in spring, predicting it would be over by Christmas. 5 years and 2 children later, the couple are still together and seem pretty happy. Next story. The bride was constantly on her phone and very often had to go to the bathroom with it. Like a lot. She did this a lot the year of the wedding, and on the day of, something didn't seem right, so someone followed her. She went into one of those family bathrooms that only had one toilet in it, and she forgot to lock the door. One of the bridesmaids opens the door, and the bride is spread eagle, finger blasting herself on FaceTime with an ex-boyfriend. Wedding obviously was stopped at this point. Groom was furious. Turns out she had been cheating on the groom pretty much the entire time they have ever been together. Edit. To answer some questions, no, they didn't get married. I have no idea if her and the bridesmaid are still friends. As far as I know, the bride moved on to the next victim. Then I ran into the groom maybe 4 months after all of this happened. He said when he left the reception, he went and packed up a suitcase and flew to Jamaica for like 2 weeks. Quit his job, changed his phone number, and when he came back, she was gone. Doesn't know where she is and doesn't care. He sold his house, bought a piece of property, and built a small house on it, like 700 square feet. I don't remember what he does for a living now, but he made it clear he will never trust another woman again. Haven't seen him since. Next story. The groom had his car stolen on the morning of the wedding and spent the whole day swearing and punching inanimate objects because, as we all heard 1,000 times that day, not only was it the most important thing in his life, it also wasn't insured. The wedding was at a Boy Scout hall for no apparent reason, and the reception was in the cafeteria at one of those underwater world places with the glass tunnel, but no one was allowed to go see the fish because, get this, the whole day had a Lion King theme. Then, towards the end of the night, the bride beat one of the bridesmaids half to death because she caught her effing a groomsman who she tearfully admonished for cheating on her. I have no idea how long the marriage lasted for. I never saw or heard from them again. Next story. We were good friends with a couple who fought all the time. She wanted to get married desperately, and he was indifferent. After years of nagging, he finally proposed. On the day of the wedding, right before he walked out, he looked at us and sighed, "Well, maybe now she'll stop nagging at me and finally be effing happy." And now, they are divorced. She cheated on him with some guy that she used to date. Next story. I was his best man, and he spent 50 euros on the rings because he knew she would leave him as soon as she realizes that he really doesn't want kids and it's not just a phase. Took her 6 months. I was his best man again yesterday, and this time the rings were solid. Next story. Shortly after the ceremony, the groom announced to everyone, including his bride, my niece, that he had enlisted in the Navy and was due to report in a few weeks. She was beyond surprised. They didn't even make it a year. Next story. Worked as a cook for a 4-year in advance booked wedding spot. I would prep for 4 days, work one wedding, and then have my days off. My weddings were Saturdays. I'd never see the ceremony, often off-site, if on-site I was busy. So this one wedding, people complained about the sun reflecting off of the water. They booked the time and place themselves, refused all help, but blamed us for not having a sun shield of some sort. So had 100 more people there than planned at the party, and we ran out of food. 40 and 140 are two different beasts, begins to turn to a Coke party 30 seconds after the food, like everyone went to their cars in the washrooms. I mean, 100 people at once, bride and groom, their parents. Strung up, the poor DJ got his work in. Bride would come in and grab his wrists, telling him to change songs every 45 seconds. Play this now, play this. People started whispering a bunch, like everywhere. There was something up. More Coke, more whispers. The security guy comes up to me and tells me that the new husband is passed out in his car, dead drunk. Car is running. And new wife is now loose and F's someone. It's unknown who, but it was done behind out by some garbage cans. Next story. Husband disappeared 2 hours into a 6-hour reception because he was bored. Just went into the house and hung out on his phone. It was a chill ranch thing, games and drinking and dancing, adults only. Also, I didn't meet him until the wedding, while me and the bride hung out pretty frequently. So there was some lead up to that which didn't help. He wasn't cheating, just watching golf videos. Edit. Also, they lasted less than 2 months. They didn't divorce because of that. Dude 180'd as soon as the ring was on. Going golfing every night for hours with different groups of people. She asked him to limit it to a couple of times a week. She suggested therapy. He blew her off. She got out and is much happier now. And the wedding was semi-destination 6 hours away. His friends drove out there and he ditched them too. The reception was more bonfire-y with free booze and yard games, stuff both of them had done before with his friends. He bounced right after the obligatory wedding stuff when he finally got to go do fun things. I could try and psychoanalyze what he was thinking, but who knows? Probably some kind of regret. Next story. They were both high on heroin, and this wedding was all planned by the bride's family the same day as they had decided to get married the night before. The groom's family didn't even show up, so he only had his best friend attend. The reception was just a big table at the same restaurant where the bride's, now divorced parents had their wedding reception. This was when the bride's best friend decided to tell her family that she was on drugs. They spent their wedding night getting high using the cash they were gifted. I am thankfully no longer married and am now sober. Next story. Not so much evidence that they shouldn't have been together, but evidence that my sister-in-law is just a horrible, thoughtless person. The wedding was supposed to start at 3 p.m. At 3, she was getting in a bathtub in her hotel room to unwind before starting to get ready. All of us bridesmaids were already ready, though. I had to call my mom and tell her that we were at least an hour out. My brother was there waiting already. Oh, and it was October, Halloween, around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and windy, and it was an outdoor wedding in a park with no indoor venue attached. Their poor guests ended up waiting more than an hour and a half. The divorce papers have been filed and should be final within a few weeks. Next story. My one mate had a wedding in Jamaica after dating this girl for less than a year. They fought all the time, and the night before the wedding, he called me and had a heart-to-heart about how he doesn't think they should get married and that there is no spark. He ends up getting married, and I find out a few months later that I was one of 8 people he called that night. I think he was hoping for one of us would make him cancel the wedding. They lasted in 1 year and 2 weeks. Next story. The groom drunkenly cornered my roommate and demanded a BJ as a wedding gift. Apparently, he was under the mistaken impression that all gay men are excited to give pretty much everyone a BJ at any time. My roommate declined the invitation. Shockingly, the marriage did not last. Next story. Bride's family looked super underdressed, except for her brother, for her wedding, and she didn't have a father-daughter dance either. She danced with her brother instead, and when they were dancing, she was tearing up. Her family also left early, again, except for her brother. The groom's family loved her, though, and didn't understand why they didn't seem supportive. They were still together and just recently had their son. Next story. My good friend was marrying this guy. We'll call him Ned. Ned definitely had a drinking problem that everyone swept under the rug. He promised my friend he would keep it under wraps for the wedding. He made it down the aisle, but by the reception, he was binge drinking. Then, by the end of the night, the groom, Ned, completely disappeared. No one could find him. A few nervous laughs turned into mild panic when the lights were turned on in an effort to find him. My husband decided to go look for him in the parking lot, where he finds Ned on his lips in the dirt. He had smoked a joint and got the spins. My husband tried to talk some sense into him, reminding him, "This is your wedding, dude." He got Ned to come inside and did the most cringy walk of shame past the bride's family, who was very cross with him. Ned was supposed to drive them 11 miles from the venue to their hotel in bride's grandfather's vintage Corvette. He was too drunk to drive, so the bride's grandfather drove them, and the bride had to sit on the middle armrest with no seatbelts. Grandpa then drops them off at the hotel. Bride barely gets groom up to the room, where he passes out on the bed. Bride had to wander the halls looking for someone to help her out of her wedding dress since her groom was passed out drunk. The word annulment was definitely floating around that next morning. As crushed as the bride was, she stuck it out. 3 years later, they are now separated and divorcing because he's still a drunk. Next story. I went to a wedding, and the bride and groom barely stood next to each other the whole night unless they were at their table. The groom was more at the bar than with his now wife. Their dance was them awkwardly avoiding eye contact, not speaking, and just awkward for everyone. The wedding didn't feel like a wedding. Every single person was questioning why they got married, from family to friends, and they are still together. So there was a tweet I saw a few years ago, and it still exists in my mind, but this person said, "Do you ever just look at a couple and know they don't have sex?" And I was like, yes, I've seen them. I've worked in customer service. They come up and they ring out and there's no spark in their eyes. I'm like, you guys haven't interacted once. There's no happiness. You can just feel the energy or lack thereof. It's like a void of black has just walked up to the counter. They have sex once or twice a year, and it is sad and depressing, and he cries, she smokes a cigarette, and I hope I never get in a relationship like that. I hope you don't either, fellow viewer. Anyway, next story. So, I've attended quite a few weddings that have ended in divorce, and I swear you can tell at the wedding. I have attended all 3 of my uncle's weddings. With the first 2, it seemed to me that we as a family had more fun than the brides. The divorce did not take long. The second wife literally permanently left the country and told my uncle not to follow her. She was a perfectionist and could not deal with the fact that my uncle's business was failing. My uncle is one of those guys with his head in the clouds. Not incredibly ambitious, kind of like a puppy. Wife number 3 is great though. He is happy, they had a kid, both their first, and basically what he has always wanted. Happy ending. Next story. Bride kept telling anyone who'd listen that she'd booked the wedding through Groupon, and it was super cheap. They hadn't planned to get married until she saw the deal online. Not sure how long it lasted, but she posted a sarcastic comment about how successful her marriage was on Facebook on her first anniversary, using the Memories feature. Next story. My second wedding. The officiant asked if anyone had a reason these two should not be wed. A storm was coming, and at that exact moment, a very low-pitched rumble of thunder came from the sky. Boom! Everyone just kind of stopped and looked up. I said, "Maybe try that again?" Everyone chuckled. He asked again, and nothing. Found out maybe 5 months later that she had been cheating on me for a while. We aren't together anymore. Next story. He overdosed about 2 years later. He went missing right before the reception to do a couple of lines with his friends. We searched for him everywhere and had to postpone the entrance because we couldn't find him. So much stuff, though, came out after his death, even with his addiction issues. He absolutely loved and adored my best friend. I feel so sad to see how it all ended. Next story. I was best man in my friend's wedding. He had only ever been intimate with his girlfriend and resented that she had experiences with other people. He and a coworker became close and started to mess around. Eventually, he broke it off with the coworker and proposed to the girlfriend. During a stressful moment of the day of the rehearsal dinner, he told his bride-to-be about the coworker. In that way, you decide to use a nuclear bomb to win an argument? Needless to say, this created tension all through dinner into the wedding day and reception. The wedding evening ended with me in a hotel room, consoling the bride, who was in tears, doing my best to reassure her that it would be okay. They ended up getting divorced eventually. Next story. One of my wife's sorority sisters got married recently. We're not that close, and I don't know the groom, but every time I've seen her, she's been belligerently drunk. At her wedding reception, she got blackout drunk and thought it would be funny to hide under a table, but then she spilled wine on her dress and started crying. New husband tried to get her to come back out and socialize, and she ended up smashing a glass into his face and sending him to the ER. She almost bragged about it when she told the story like a "no one tells me what to do" kind of thing. They were going to get a divorce, but ended up getting pregnant instead. Next story. Not at the wedding, but before, my wife and I got married in the Catholic Church, and we were required to do a pre-canna session. We thought it was total bullcrap. We weren't religious then, and essentially atheist now. Basically just did it to appease parents, but it was actually a very good idea. There were 5 other couples in the session with us. The counselor running it asked a very simple question. What do you think marriage will be like? What are you expecting? We were to write our answers down individually, exchange them with our spouse-to-be, and then read them out loud. The answers were illuminating. Every single woman, other than my wife, interpreted marriage as the wedding day itself. Every single description was the size of the limo, what her dress would look like, who was doing her hair, what sort of food was going to be served, and at what venue. The counselor looked a little horrified and tried to gently probe for the correct answers, but none of them had a clue. I'm sure some of them are still together, but wow, the number of people who don't actually talk about expectations and decide to get married, well, just look at the divorce rate. Next story. The guy was laughing through his vows, looking over into the crowd, laughing with one of his buddies, over the shoulder of his bride-to-be, my friend. I immediately opened up my envelope, pocketed half of the money I intended as a gift. After the marriage, groom announced they were going to the casino. It was all super tacky. I think they lasted a number of 4 months. Next story. I was one of the bridesmaids in this wedding. The groom was a major jerk, very snobby and looked down on the bride and her family because they didn't have money. Because the bride's family didn't have much money and was paying for everything they could for the wedding, it was very small, and we, the bridesmaids, did most of the decorating and setting up. Bride's dad was the pastor of the church, so we were able to get in and work on the reception room a day or 2 before the wedding. The entire wedding party was supposed to help. The groomsman showed up, but no groom. He wasn't answering his phone. His parents couldn't find him. Groomsman had no idea where he was, just dropped off the face of the earth for 2 days. The wedding party looked like we were in 2 separate weddings. She wanted a turquoise blue as a wedding color, and he wanted gold. She wanted casual and comfortable. He wanted formal. So instead of either making any compromise, they each did their own thing with their side of the wedding party. The bridesmaids wore bright turquoise skirts and flip-flops. The groomsmen wore full suits with gold ties. In the photos, we looked like 2 separate weddings who stumbled on each other. Then, bride's family was super conservative and didn't drink alcohol. Their church did not allow it on church property. Groom was basically still a frat boy. He legit worked for his fraternity for a year after graduation and couldn't stand the no alcohol rule. So he got wasted in the parking lot before the ceremony and during the reception. Like we didn't all know of the groomsmen having full flasks of whiskey. I mean, I totally spiked my drink from one of the groomsmen's flasks, but I didn't get trashed or flaunted. And then we all had spent considerable money being a part of this wedding. Bridesmaid dresses, travel, hotels, etc. And agreed that if she was calling it off, we would happily eat the cost of everything and just be happy that she didn't marry him. But no. She said she couldn't call off the wedding since everyone knew they were getting married and had already arrived. Ugh, I've never seen a bride's parents look so miserable as their daughter getting married, and her dad performed the ceremony. But anyway, they lasted officially almost 4 years, but she left him maybe a year before that and moved into her own place. She was supporting him through law school and treated her like crap, wouldn't let her meet his friends, occasionally hit her if she questioned him about anything, and we found his dating profiles online, which were absolutely wild. Her super conservative Christian parents offered to get her a divorce lawyer, and his family took her side in the divorce. Next story. really late to the party here, but this is one that is so good that I have to share. A family friend's daughter gets knocked up, so the happy couple decides to get married. The guests had congregated outside of the venue, waiting for the wedding ceremony, when another woman barged in demanding to speak to the groom and proclaiming that the groom also got her pregnant. With wide eyes, we watch the drama move to behind closed doors. After a whole lot of commotion, the wedding proceeds. Turns out that the other woman was right, and the two babies were born within 2 weeks of each other. We quickly left the reception, took some cake. It was good. They didn't make it though. Next story. The bride was hyperventilating while walking down the aisle, making her veil blow out almost horizontally. Later that night, after the reception, the wedding party was chilling in the hotel hot tub, and the bride and groom surprised us by joining us. They were supposed to be shagging all night, right? But after they got in the hot tub, the bride tried to kiss my belly button in front of her new husband, who's my best friend, and I laughingly screamed at her and pushed her away. Lasted 2 years. Next story. When I was in college, I went to a wedding with my girlfriend at the time during one summer. She and I had only been together for about 5 or 6 months, so it was actually the first time I had met the bride and the groom, and most of her family for that matter. I didn't really say anything to my girlfriend because I didn't know them at all, aside from stories she told me, but I felt like they wouldn't last very long. At the reception, she spent most of her time just talking with her friends and didn't interact much with anyone else at all. He went around and tried to get time with everyone, but every so often I would see him with her and she would kind of not even acknowledge that he was there very much. When I walked past her one time on the way to grab a beer, she was bragging to her friends about how much money the dress cost her and how he wanted her to get a cheaper one, but she wouldn't have it. At one point of the night, I was outside smoking with some of the other guests and he came out the back and asked to bum a cigarette. He was one of those types of people that only smokes when they are drunk, which apparently wasn't that often for him since he was doing his residency at a hospital, so he was really busy. But the entire time, he kept looking out the door, and whenever it opened and someone came out, he quickly moved his hand, holding the cigarette behind his back, because he thought it was her. It was like he was deathly scared of her, and not like in a playful way. So it didn't surprise me when about a year later, they got divorced. Apparently, she just kind of was taking advantage of him, staying home all day, she didn't work, spending thousands of dollars ordering clothes and shoes online using his money and credit cards, and she took them out in their names. Next story. They refused to let the officiant say the whole "if anyone has a reason why these two should not be married" thing. They wouldn't allow it because they didn't want to hear anyone's opinions anymore, and they knew that more than one person was already planning on standing up to say their objection. Next story. Friend of mine married the most foul-mouthed human being I've ever met. The F-bomb was dropped in every sentence and she had no filter whatsoever. She was morbidly obese and took it personal that her future husband didn't want to consume enough food for an NFL lineman at every meal. We told him before the wedding that he didn't have to do this, and he got mad at us. The wedding went off okay, but the reception was one for the ages. She got drunk in the limousine on the way over and flashed her boobs to all of the groomsmen. Not a pretty sight. The dinner was a buffet, and she filled her plate so that it made a little mountain. She went back for seconds. Then, after so much booze, she could barely do the first dance, and he had to hold her up and pretend that it was a special moment. At the table, she bragged about her oral skills to her bridesmaids and the groom's mother. Very classy. The end of the night, it took 2 groomsmen to get her up to her room where she passed out in her dress. Then, 3 months later, she stabbed him with a knife during an argument and was arrested for felony assault. He finally got a clue and divorced her. Next story. I will say this about my own wedding. The actual day seemed perfect. No one to my knowledge thought we shouldn't be together. No one but the bride. She hid that detail very well. To this day, I'm still not sure I believe her claims that she didn't want to be married. She just seemed genuinely happy and even cried tears of joy a few times during the ceremony. All night she talked about how perfect everything was, but half a year later, she claims that she felt forced into a marriage that she never wanted. So, anyways, if you or your partner are planning on getting married, do not go through with it for the sake of others and what they might think. Don't go through with it because you've been together long enough. Don't go through with it for your soon-to-be spouse or the kids you may have together. Be selfish and do it only for yourself. If you don't want that, it isn't for you, and it will hurt everybody more when you divorce for it later. Next story. Whenever the groom's mother would make reservations at a supplier, florist, caterer, etc., the bride would then show up the next day, cancel everything, and always choose a more expensive option. They're still together 3 years later, but needless to say, it's on rocky grounds. Next story. The future groom lived next door to the future bride. He smoked pot and was unemployed. His roommate kicked him out for non-payment of rent, so he goes immediately next door and proposes marriage. They had been friends and neighbors for about 3 months at this point. The bride, who is not suspicious of his motives at all, accepts his proposal, even though he is homeless and unemployed. She takes him in. They live together while they are engaged. All of the ladies she asked to be her bridesmaids turned her down because they thought this marriage was a bad idea. The bridesmaids did not think she should marry a homeless, unemployed pot smoker. After they got married, he was complaining that he could not get a job because of his appearance, so the bride paid for him to get all of his teeth fixed. He was complaining that he was bored sitting at home without a job, so she bought him a PlayStation. He was complaining that he could not get a job without a car, so she bought him a car. He was complaining that he could not get a job with a criminal record, so she paid a lawyer to help him get all of that straightened out. He began hitting her. After a while, the bride began cheating on him with her boss at work. Within a year of their getting married, the groom filed for divorce. The judge awarded him the house, the car, and spousal support. Damn, y'all, damn. Give me this man's address, 5 of our most muscular viewers, and let's go beat this guy up and slash his tires and eat his PlayStation in front of him. Don't smash it. Don't steal it. Don't give it to charity. Eat the damn PlayStation and then break his teeth. Oh my goodness. I feel so sorry for that woman. But also, she really wasn't wise to his trap either. But I still feel bad for her, but also I want to shake her a little bit and then hug her afterwards. Oh, what a horrible person. Anyway, next story. So, I dated T for about 3 months. Her parents had divorced when she was 12. Her father remarried a woman with kids, which led to another bad divorce. She was really screwed up because of this, but it wasn't apparent until we dated. Very bad relationship. We still had mutual friends. T started dating a guy, and they quickly got engaged. She complained about him constantly. Her friends hated him. Every month, she had a new legitimate reason to call off the wedding, but she never did. One of her friends actually asked me, if he starts hitting her, do you think she would tell? She was someone I had cared about, so this was hard. The wedding and planning, it went poorly. After the invitations went out, and after people accepted, they sent another message that they were going to charge people a certain amount per plate at the reception. That didn't go over well. The wedding was apparently okay, but people said she was the worst looking bride they had ever seen. People moved, and then about 6 years later, I got in touch with one of my old friends from that time. She said that T and that guy, after a tremendously rocky few years, were now quite happy together. 3 kids. No one, and I mean no one who knew them, thought that was possible. Next story. A close friend at the time asked me to be her bridesmaid. I said yes. We went out for drinks one night, about 6 months before her wedding, and she met a guy, started a relationship with him. I told her that she can't marry her fiancé, and then she said she didn't love him. She said she had to go through with it though because everything was paid for. I told her I would not be a bridesmaid as I didn't condone this and wasn't spending all of that money on a sham wedding. Then she ended up marrying her fiancé while pregnant with this other guy's child. She got an abortion the day after her wedding. They split up 4 months later, and now she's engaged to her previous side dude, and we are no longer friends. Next story. Wedding? Oh, try the proposal. My mom told him she didn't want to remarry, kept telling him no, and then he had a heart attack. On the ride home from the hospital, he told her he wasn't going to take no for an answer. He wanted her to give him a date and a location. And he's been my stepdad for almost 8 years now. And did I mention he's a homophobe and both me and my sibling were already out as bisexual to our supportive mother? Yeah, fun times. Next story. The first sign was that the bride had cheated on the groom multiple times during the relationship, and the groom knew about it. The second was all of his friends did not like her. The third was it seems like they were in a constant fight because the bride didn't trust the groom. Guilty conscience, maybe? But the icing on the cake was when the groom's father gave a speech at the reception and ended it with, "I just hope my new daughter-in-law can learn to be faithful." The look on the bride's face was priceless. Some people, therapy, self-help books, talk to people, go to your confessional at church, listen to some self-help podcasts. I don't know. That one story at the Catholic wedding where people wrote down their expectations, very insightful. As we already know, the marriage breaking divorce rate is very high. And I think it's just because people don't have their crap together or are super lonely that they'll just date anyone. I don't know. But you know what you can do? You can stay married to Undersparked and Really Sparked and engage with the subscribe button and have sex with the like button and have kids with the comment section. I don't know. I love you. Will you marry me, fellow viewer? But you think on that, and we'll continue it in the next video. But thank you all so much for watching, commenting. Have a really good day, and bye-bye.